All right, a good Thursday morning to you. Meteorologist Brian McClure. I wanted to wait till 11 a.m. to get the latest advisory and updates before I did a new video update for you. Hey, you like my shirt today? St. Lucia. I have friends down there. Once went down there and got to meet a boat captain, and so now I kind of always feel bad when tropical systems obviously pass by there, but luckily this one wasn't a big deal when it passed by yesterday, just a little bit of rain, but I figured in honor of them I'd wear my St. Lucia shirt today. All right, let's get right to it. Tropical update. It's July 30th, again, just after 11 a.m. Wanted to go ahead and update you on what we're seeing out there. Obviously, all eyes are right here on Isaias. That's how you pronounce it. A lot of people, obviously, in America are pronouncing it Isaias and all that, but the proper name, I don't really care how you pronounce it, but the proper name is Isaias. Some other people have asked me about, well, what about these features out here? Don't we have to be worried about the next tropical storms? No, we don't have to be. Number one, you don't have to worry about anything if you don't want to. They are so far out there that it's not a big deal. Number two is that, could something in here develop? Yeah, maybe, but usually that's what they do. They curve. And is something spinning out here near the coast of Africa? Yes, but something's always spinning and coming off the coast of Africa this time of year. So even if that something tries to develop there, it might be squashed by dry air, or again, it might also recurve. So nah, not really going to worry about that kind of stuff right now, especially when you actually have something closer to the United States. As a meteorologist, you basically blank out this stuff usually because it's like, yeah, that's not a big deal. Instead, you concentrate on what's in front of you right here. All right, so there it is. Let's look at the reconnaissance aircraft. They're flying through it, or they did fly through it this morning. I guess they're still technically out there, but they're pretty much wrapping up. It's interesting what they found. They basically have found that this thing is still not well organized. So even though, yeah, we officially have a center of circulation, this thing has underperformed during its entire lifespan so far. Right about in here, you'll see they found a minimum pressure, but I'll be honest with you, it looks like just to the west of there is where there was a better coalescence, I guess is the word, appears to be where there was a center. I don't know, it's really, really hard to tell. This is just kind of a jumbled mess right in here, and that just proved to you again that even though there's kind of a center, really the strongest winds are way out here. And to put into perspective, by the way, what you're looking at here is this is the flight path where you see these lines, okay? And then you see these arrows like this showing the wind direction, okay? And so that's how you start to coalesce or kind of converge on, oh, that's your center right in there. This is Puerto Rico right up in here, and this is Dominican Republic, what we call Hispaniola, mixed with, or joined with Haiti right up there, okay? So it's moving in northwest direction. Let me go over here and actually go back to satellite imagery for you. And so that way we can see, let's go to the high res. There you go. That gives you a better idea of where it is located, because now you can see where Hispaniola is. Here, let me pause it right there. Okay. Here's Dominican Republic and Haiti. There's Puerto Rico. Okay, so the center is somewhere right about in here. And the idea here is if that's the low-level center, it'll just move like that, right? Not really. These things get so complicated, and sometimes it's so difficult to do these talks, and it's actually tons more difficult to go on TV and in a 2.5-minute weather that is usually about what TV stations give meteorologists, sometimes 3 minutes, but in that short amount of time, somehow explain everything that's going on. And that's just impossible, which is why a lot of times I'll say, hey, come to my Facebook page or go to my social accounts, because at least there I have a little bit more time to be relaxed and explain it slowly for you. What's really probably going to happen here, yes, there's a low-level center out in here that finally came together, but all the strong winds and the strongest part of this tropical wave all along has been right out in here. And so right now you have these really strong winds that are doing like that. And technically it's not attached to the tropical storm. It's more like still the northern vortice part of the tropical wave. And the southern part extends all the way down here like this. And the southern part's not really that strong because the winds are more like that. Okay. So we've talked all week long about how Hispaniola is basically the hurricane shredder and it disrupts hurricanes. Well, if it's not a hurricane and not a strong storm when it comes upon Hispaniola, does it matter? Not really. You already have a very weak storm. I mean, the only reason this is even given the label of a tropical storm with 50-mile-per-hour winds, I'll be honest with you, it's just because of the northern extent of tropical storm gust out in here. There are no 50-mile-per-hour winds anywhere near the center, not even remotely close. To tell you the truth, if you were down here on the southeastern tip of Dominican Republic, it really wouldn't be that big a deal. It wouldn't be that windy. It wouldn't be that strong of a storm at all. So what's happening right now is you have really strong convergence out in this area. I bring this up and I spend a lot of time on this because what's probably going to happen, and we don't talk a lot about this on air because it gets confusing, but this center is probably actually going to jump, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a new one develop here because there's actually a mid-level circulation that's up in this area. And sometimes these low-level and mid-levels are not joined. They can sometimes jump. We say jump because that's just a better way to put it rather than try and go into the technical aspects, and join together, especially when there's some land convergence. And that's what appears to me could happen. When you look at the forecast track, here's the latest one. The first thing that really jumps out at you is, wow, everything's shifted east, right? So if you're sitting here in Tampa Bay or anywhere on the west coast of Florida, you're probably going, gosh, we might not even see a drop of rain. You might be right. We might not. And that's one of the things I've been saying all along is people think that just because a tropical storm heads at Florida, that means rain. Not always. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes they dry us out. If you're sitting on the east coast of Florida or the east coast of South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, you might be going, oh my gosh, this could be disastrous. It could be, but I wouldn't stress still yet too much. And here's why. Even though the eastward shift is happening, there's still a whole lot of things that are happening. Yes, the Euro ensemble, which by the way is right over here, it has also shifted to the east, although it's still a little bit farther west than the GFS, which has shifted way to the east. There it is right there. Let me go down here to the UK. And although I don't usually like this model as much for hurricane tracking, it's still kind of smack dab right over Florida. And by the way, the Canadian model is too. The Euro and the GFS are the two that really most people rely on. They're very reliable. They're very good at tropical forecasting. They have their positives and negatives. All right, so let's talk about why, if they're all shifting east, I'm sitting here saying, there's still a lot of headwinds. Okay, let's start with this. Remember how I've been saying the past few days there's a lot of dry air. There it is. Let's assume the center tries to redevelop north of Hispaniola like we were just talking about. If it does that, what it's going to do is it's going to then try to get on its heading going like that. Well, what it's going to do then is it's going to tend to pull this dry air down and around on the back side. So in other words, believe it or not, something that would be positive for the storm, strengthening in a better environment, could actually be detrimental to the storm down the road. Does that make sense? In other words, short-term advantage, long-term disadvantage. Because also what happens long-term is, and I apologize, there's a lot of colors on this map, so let me explain it. Center of circulation right about in here today. Let's just assume that it's right, and it kind of tries to redevelop on the northern side of Hispaniola. Do you see all, here, let me change the color. There we go. You see all this color right in here. That is wind shear that is moving like that. Okay, let me move this forward in time to right about Saturday. Okay, this is interesting. What's happening is, essentially the model says, gosh, what happened was I tried to redevelop down here, and then I tried to develop here, and then I tried to develop in here. I've had a lot of land interaction right through here, and look at this wind in front of it. Still wind shear. Okay, now let me go a little further out to Sunday. And no matter where it moves, there's wind shear. There's wind shear here. There's wind shear here. Okay? So my point is, as it moves in time, no matter where it goes, it ultimately runs into wind shear, both from a trough dipping down through the southeast, which you can see right in here, and winds coming from the southwest right in here. So this is the GFS model. I wouldn't be surprised to see this storm never really get its feet under it if it stays on a west-northwestward path towards Florida. I wouldn't be surprised to see it just continue to just stumble its way along and just jumbling along, 50-mile-per-hour winds. I'm a weak tropical storm, and I'm going to bumble my way right towards Florida. Wouldn't be one bit surprised to see that. Let me go back to something that's a little different. Okay, let me choose this. Okay, this kind of gives you an idea right here. Okay, there's the center right there, south of Hispaniola. Notice what happens today. It looks like, oh, did you see that? Looks like it tries to redevelop right there. There you can see what appears to be kind of a trine of a redeveloping to the north of the island. See what I mean? Okay. So now let's track this further out. There's that west-northwestward movement. And by late Saturday going into Sunday, it looks like it just kind of bumps into Florida. Not as a strong storm, still kind of weak, still kind of the same. Then, at that point in time, it finally says, okay, now I'm going to drift north. You know why? Because of that trough, that front that's off to the west of it. So what would happen is, it would basically move like this, then feel all that wind shear and that trough, and then start to move like that. And so what's happening is, a lot of people are stressing about Florida. They probably don't need to be. And then a lot of people are stressing in the Carolinas that probably don't need to be, because there's a lot of headwinds in its way. I mean, we haven't even discussed other things. And, you know, a lot of people will talk about, well, what about, you know, the water temperatures? The water temperatures are always warm in there. That doesn't matter. This is not like a Dorian, an Irma, a Maria, where it was in perfect environment, tons of moisture, no dry air, no wind shear. It's not like that. You can't compare all hurricanes to each other. You know, a lot of people will see something like an Irma and go, oh my gosh, this looks exactly like it because it's going west and then it's going to make a northerly turn. No, it's nothing like Irma. I mean, not even remotely close. This is a pitiful little tropical storm that's had a hard time developing during its entire lifespan. I'm not saying it can't. It absolutely could grow into a hurricane. It's just going to have a really hard time. And so at some point in time, people just need to realize this isn't like all the other storms out there that have come before it. Here's the European model. I think it's doing a pretty good job today too. Honestly, people knock these computer models, both the Euro and the GFS. People seem to have more of a love affair though with the Euro. I don't know why. It has done well with some storms in the past, but it has its bad days too. And the GFS has been doing well lately. They both are very similar, quite honestly. Watch this. See how it, again, kind of bumps the storm by late tonight going into tomorrow morning out to the north side of Hispaniola. See it right out there? That's that redevelopment that I'm talking about. So assuming that happens, notice how it just kind of drags it west-northwestward slowly, weak, tropical storm, and just bumps it right into Florida. Bloop, there it is. That's not a major hurricane. That's a weak tropical storm with rain. That's like a blob of rain. Now the only difference is, again, the Euro is a little farther west still. It's more like the UK, the Canadian. It still is kind of in that western camp of it brings it so far west that it probably limps it across the southern part of Florida and maybe even tries to bring it all the way to the Gulf. And again, I know a lot of people freak out when they hear that and go, oh my gosh, then it could get in the Gulf and bomb out. No. Remember all that wind shear I just mentioned? No, not happening. So even if you take this all the way out, it just has basically a blob of rain sitting on top of Florida by Sunday. If anything, that might actually be good for some areas because you could see some really beneficial rains and a lot of rain. It could be bad for other areas, though, if we get too much rain. So my point to all this is, as of right now, you essentially have what I would call two scenarios, maybe three. And let me go over them before I end this. One scenario is it stays really weak during its entire lifespan and it goes on the western southern envelope of this track and does more like that. It has interaction with Dominican Republic, Haiti, maybe even Cuba. It just can't get its act together. It just keeps wobbling along westward and then it just runs into Florida as a rainmaker, a blob of rain this weekend. Okay, that's possible. If you take the center line, which I would agree with the National Hurricane Center right now for doing this. The more realistic possibility is a center redevelops by later tonight into tomorrow on the north side of Hispaniola, and it takes more of a northwest movement like this, maybe bumps into Florida, finally feels that trough coming into the southeast, and then makes that turn. That is why you're seeing that as the official track, okay? And that's a very distinct possibility. If that happens, you also still have a tropical storm. Maybe a Category 1 hurricane by the time it gets all the way up here. Because at that point in time, finally, you might have a better environment. Again, remember, there's wind shear working against it this entire time. And with wind shear, if the storm is moving like that, and your winds are moving like that, it just shreds it to pieces. But if your storm is moving like this, and your wind shear is like this, it can do better. In other words, it's in conjunction with the storm. That at that point in time, if it can make it all the way up there, then yeah, it could strengthen a little bit more. If you are looking for and kind of hoping for, yeah, I like big hurricanes, which I don't, but if you're hoping for that, and you're one of those people that just wants to see a big hurricane, then what you want to see the farthest east path. That's what you'd want, because out here is where conditions are better. They're not as hostile, there's not as much wind shear, and also as it makes that turn, this would be the best place for it to really strengthen. And as of right now, that just doesn't appear to be a likelihood. All right, I've already gone too long. I got to get out and mow the lawn. Happy Thursday, everybody. We'll keep an eye on this. As of right now, it's still a weak tropical storm wobbling its way along west-northwestward. It's July 30th, 11 a.m. Have a great day.